The following episode of Faith and Finance Live is pre-recorded, so please don't call in.
The late Larry Burkett once said, "Money is either the best or the worst area of communication in our marriages." Hi, I'm Rob West. Few things reveal the strength of a couple's unity quite like money. But what if your finances were rooted in oneness and kingdom impact? Today I'll talk with Dr. Art Rayner about how to become a truly rich couple. And we have some great calls lined up, but we won't be taking your live calls today because we're pre-recorded. This is Faith and Finance Live, biblical wisdom for your financial journey. Well, it's always a pleasure to have my friend Art Rayner in the studio. Art is the founder of the Institute for Christian Financial Health and Christian Money Solutions. He's also the author of several books on biblical finance, including The Rich Couple, 30 Days of Following God's Design for a Financially Healthy Marriage. Art, great to have you back.
Rob, it is always an honor, so thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's my privilege. Art, let's dive in. I love this book, and you use an interesting phrase in it. You say a financially rich couple. I've already referred to it at least once here in the open. Explain that for us. What do you mean?
Yeah, great question, and I'm very clear in the book about this. So a rich couple isn't necessarily one with the biggest bank account. It is a couple that is rich in contentment and purpose. They recognize that everything they have belongs to God, and they find joy in faithfully stewarding His resources rather than constantly chasing after more. So they're united around a shared mission. They are generous with what they have been given, and they are free from the endless comparison and discontent that money can create. You know, financial wealth can disappear, but contentment in Christ and purpose rooted in God's kingdom creates a richness that lasts, and that is the kind of wealth every couple should pursue.
Absolutely. I love that. What a beautiful picture. Now, you encourage couples to decide to be one. So practically speaking, what does it look like to move from mine and yours to this mindset that reflects the picture of marriage that God designed for us that's really about ours and not mine and yours?
Oh, I love that question. Yeah. Moving from mine and yours to ours begins with recognizing that marriage is a covenant, not a contract. So in Genesis 2:24, we're told that a husband and a wife become one flesh, and that includes every part of their lives, including their finances. So practically, that means combining accounts, sharing passwords, and embracing complete financial transparency. So my encouragement to couples is to schedule a brief monthly meeting huddle to review your financial goals and to make decisions together. Establish a no surprises spending threshold. So if a purchase exceeds that amount, then you need to send a quick text to your spouse first. And then finally, change your language. Start with saying our income or our debt and our generosity. Unity grows through intentional habits. And so I encourage couples to chase after that.
Yeah, unity is so key, and it's so foreign to so many couples, especially in this area of money. But this idea of a team sport with regard to marriage is so key. And that's the number one mindset shift that you share in the book. Describe that a bit further.
Yeah, so marriage is a team sport. My family, we're all about sports, and so I like that analogy. And your spouse is supposed to be your number one teammate. So that means your loyalty belongs to one another, not to your parents, not to your children. We love them.
Yes.
But not to your friends. We love them, but that's not where your loyalty lies. You can disagree with your spouse behind closed doors, but when you step outside, you present a united front. And that builds trust because each spouse knows the decisions won't be reversed in the parking lot or, undermined by outside voices. For example, if your in-laws encourage an expensive purchase, a healthy response would be, thanks for the suggestion. We'll talk it over and we'll let you know. So that is what team number one looks like, protecting unity before everything else.
Oh, I love that. Having a unified front and really being of one mind and heart doesn't mean we won't have disagreements. It also doesn't mean that as we talk about our values and our priorities, they're always going to align, but we need to be committed to finding oneness at the end of the day and driving toward unity, and that needs to include in our financial lives as well. Well, when we come back with Dr. Art Rayner today, we're going to continue to unpack this. But what about that knot in your stomach when the conversation turns to money? We're going to give you some ideas, some practical ways to ease that tension. We'll also talk about some of the marriage dividers and how you get past those as well. Art Rayner's here today. We're talking a financially healthy marriage. Much more after this. Stick around. When couples decide to be one, money can become less of a source of tension and more of a tool for unity and kingdom impact. That's certainly God's heart in marriage. We're talking about that today, a financially healthy marriage. With us is my friend Art Rayner. Art is the founder of the Institute for Christian Financial Health and Christian Money Solutions. He's also the author of the book, The Rich Couple, 30 Days of Following God's Design for a Financially Healthy Marriage. You can buy it wherever you buy books. Art, we've been describing these mindset shifts that are so key. And, you know, as folks are listening to this topic, I'm sure there's some listeners that are remembering that knot in their stomach that they sense every time the conversation turns to money. And in your book, you offer a practical way to ease that tension. Explain that to our listeners.
Yeah, Rob, and that is so very common. And one of the best ways to reduce financial tension is to share your money stories. So our past experiences with money shape our present fears, our habits, and impulses. So as couples, you want to talk through those stories. Help your spouse understand your money personality, whether you're naturally a spender, a saver, an investor, or ignore. That understanding creates empathy instead of frustration. Suddenly it's not, why are you like this? But now I understand why that purchase makes you so anxious. It also helps couples divide financial responsibilities according to their strengths. So instead of, allowing childhood baggage to create hidden conflict, money stories transform it into a shared strategy for moving forward. So share your money stories. That's big.
Yeah, that is so key. And Art, so much of the way we handle money was shaped by how it was modeled for us growing up, by how God has wired us, including our temperament. How is getting that out on the table with your spouse and talking about some of those early memories of money and coming to an understanding of what drives our money decisions individually? How is that important to drive toward unity as a couple?
Well, it helps you to understand where your spouse is coming from. Yeah. It provides a sense of empathy. So as your spouse is coming to the table with a desire maybe to save a little bit more, to have a little bit more in the emergency fund, and maybe that's not your natural bent. Maybe you're more of a spender or an investor, or maybe you're an ignorer. You understand where they are coming from. And so it's not this, oh, I can't believe you're saying this. It's actually I understand why you are saying this. And it helps create empathy, and hopefully it creates a better line of communication for you and your spouse.
Yeah, I think that's right on. If you haven't done this, maybe the next time you're on a money date or talking about money, just answer the question, each of you, what was your earliest memory of money? And see how what comes to mind isn't still playing out in how you each handle money today. All right, Art, let's turn to generosity. You list it among your first money milestones. Why is that the best place to begin? I have an idea, but I'm curious.
I think you do. So I began with generosity because that's where the Bible starts, okay? This is not an Art Rayner idea. So throughout Scripture, God calls his people to recognize that he owns everything and that we are the managers of what he has entrusted to us. So that's why money milestone 1 is to start giving. It redirects the heart before it redirects the budget. It gives couples a shared purpose that they can celebrate together while protecting them from lifestyle creep as their income continues to grow. So financial health begins with faithful stewardship, and faithful stewardship begins with generosity, not bigger bank accounts.
Yeah, that's well said. Speaking of those milestones, I think it might be helpful to just unpack those quickly. What are the 8 money milestones couples can use to track their progress?
Yeah, so the 8 money milestones that we use is just a guide. It helps us answer that question, what financial step is next? So money milestone 1 is to start giving. Money milestone 2 is to save $1,500 for a minor emergency. Money milestone 3 is to max out your 401k or 403b match. Money milestone 4 is to pay off all of your debt except for your mortgage. Money milestone 5 is to save 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses for a job loss level emergency. So that's your traditional emergency fund. Money milestone 6 is to put 15% of your gross income toward retirement. Money milestone 7 is either to save for your kids' college or pay off for your mortgage. And then money milestone 8 is to live and give more generously. So it starts with generosity and it ends with generosity.
And there's actually a book on all of them, right?
Correct. Yeah, that can be found in the Money Challenge, or it's also found in The Rich Couple. So either of those two books provide you with the 8 money milestones.
Okay, excellent. It's so helpful. Which of the money milestones tends to trip couples up the most? And what have you found helps to get unstuck?
So the very first one that tends to trip couples up is actually money milestone 1. Because oftentimes I'll meet with couples, I do financial counseling, I'll meet with couples, and they're not on the same page with the biblical foundation for financial health, and that is generosity. They have not discussed what to give, how much to give, when to give. And so if we can establish that baseline, then it goes a long way toward building everything else in their financial life. So it starts with generosity.
Yeah, that's helpful. You warn couples about what you call the 4 marriage dividers, and I want to unpack those for a moment. I think these are really helpful.
Yeah. So the 4 biggest marriage dividers around money are poor communication, selfishness, distrust, and unrealistic expectations. So poor communication is addressed by having a simple weekly 10-minute money conversation before you ever open a spreadsheet. Selfishness fades when couples stop thinking in terms of my money and start celebrating each other's wins. Distrust is overcome through complete transparency. We're talking about shared accounts, shared passwords, and agreed upon spending guidelines. Unrealistic expectations are replaced with a realistic shared financial plan that's reviewed regularly. So ultimately, one principle that ties this all together is to bring everything into the light. Talk early and pray often.
That's so good. If someone's listening today, Art, and they say, I love what you're talking about, but that's just doesn't even seem possible in my marriage. We're miles apart. What would you say to begin turning that around?
Well, don't start with the budget. Start with your hearts. So pray together. So in The Rich Couple, I encourage couples to begin with this simple prayer. Lord, help us to be one. Help us experience the contentment and purpose that you desire for us. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your mission. Please help us steward your possessions well, leveraging them for the advancement of your kingdom. And then I encourage couples to spend 15 minutes sharing their money stories without interrupting or judging each other. And then finally, take one small step together, such as opening a joint savings account with $50. The small acts of unity can create lasting momentum.
Yeah, that is so good. Well, Art, I really appreciate your insights. This is such an important topic. And folks, I would love for you to pick up a copy of this book. It's called The Rich Couple, 30 Days of Following God's Design for a Financially Healthy Marriage. You can buy it where you buy books. You can also head over to ChristianMoneySolutions.com. That's ChristianMoneySolutions.com. Art, thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
That's Art Rayner, founder of the Institute for Christian Financial Health and Christian Money Solutions. Again, the title of this book, The Rich Couple, 30 Days of Following God's Design for a Financially Healthy Marriage. All right, we're going to head to a break, so don't go anywhere. Still a lot more to come. Even though we're away from the studio today and you shouldn't call in, we have some great questions that you're really going to enjoy as we continue to apply God's wisdom to your financial decisions. We'll be right back. So glad to have you with us today on Faith and Finance Live. Our team is away today, so don't call in, but we lined up some great questions in advance, and we'll be going to those here in just a moment. Let me also remind you that the advice that I give each day on this program is general in nature. We offer principles and ideas that apply at a high level. They are not personalized, so that's why you should always seek professional financial advice. And if you'd like to find a professional who shares your values, we, of course, here at Faith and Finance Live recommend the Certified Kingdom Advisor designation. These are men and women who've met high standards, and they've been trained to bring a biblical worldview of financial decision-making. You can find one at faithfi.com. All right, let's head to the phones to Iowa. Hi, Perry. Go ahead.
Morning, Rob. It's a two-part question. The first part is, what's the best way to protect yourself from identity theft? And the second part is, our home is paid for, and what's the best way to protect ourselves so somebody can't come in and put a mortgage on it or a lien on it without us knowing about it?
Yeah, great question. So let's start with the identity theft piece. The best way, hands down, to protect yourself against identity theft is to freeze your credit at all three credit bureaus. This is free. It'll put a 4-digit PIN number on your credit file. You'll want to do it for you and your wife. And that would prevent someone from coming in an unauthorized way, opening an account in your name fraudulently, because when they attempt to do so and they try to pull the credit, which they always do, they would not be able to because they don't have the PIN number. So that's number one. I think the second is to use strong, unique passwords. So unique meaning that's not the same one across all your accounts, and strong meaning, you've got a long string of characters, and I would probably use a password manager to generate those passwords and then store them securely. Third would be what's called two-factor authentication. Most people do it through SMS messaging, text messaging, where the two-factor is sent to you. That's not as secure as what's called an authenticator app. And so all of these banking and other companies that offer two-factor authentication will allow you to use an authenticator app, and that would be the most secure way. Google has one. There's a number of others. You also want to make sure that you're not using public Wi-Fi to log into your secure accounts. You want to make sure that you're checking your credit reports regularly. I know I'm giving you a lot here, but I'll just kind of finish up with be aware of phishing scams as well. Don't click on links in emails or give out your information over the phone, no matter who somebody says they represent, unless you've initiated the call or you've gone directly to their website to get their phone number or information. Does that all make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good. So those would be kind of some best practices. With regard to your house, we don't think it's worth the money to get what's called title lock insurance because it doesn't lock anything. It only notifies you if someone attempts to falsify your deed, which you can do on your own. And if somebody tried to foreclose on you because somebody fraudulently transferred your deed, took out a mortgage that was not paid, well, they wouldn't be able to because that would be fraudulent. And you can't foreclose on someone that would be, fraudulent conveyance. And so it would be thrown out in court because of the fraud. So what do? Well, I would contact your county records office and see if, many of them now offer this, they can place an alert on your particular record such that if there was ever any changes, you would be alerted to it. And that's free, and that would probably be a great defense, and it doesn't require you to spend any money, which, again, I think is unnecessary. It's a very low risk, and they're not doing anything you can't do yourself.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right, Perry, thanks for calling today. Arkansas. Rick, go ahead, sir.
Yes, I've got a property that I will be selling in the future that I think will net gain me $1 million. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to use as much donation as I can to mitigate taxes.
Yeah, it is a great question. And I love this strategy because asking this question now is really so key. And, there are some giving limits. So cash gifts to charities, the IRS generally allows up to 60% of AGI in a year. For appreciated assets like real estate, 30%. of AGI would be, what's allowable there. But you can carry that forward. So if you give more than the limit, you can carry forward those deductions for up to 5 years. So it's not lost. It just takes time to fully use. The key idea, though, when it comes to assets, especially assets that have a significant gain attached to them, would be to give, then sell the property. And that's really powerful because the donated portion, whether that's, a percentage of this property or the entire thing, and that would be up to you, any portion that's given away before it's sold is going to avoid the capital gains tax. And then you get the charitable deduction, again, up to the limits, for the full market value. And the simplest way to do this, and you may be familiar with this term, is a donor-advised fund. Think of it like a charitable checking account where you'd open a donor-advised fund. I'd recommend with our friends at the National Christian Foundation, they call it a giving fund. You could do it in 5 minutes at ncfgiving.com. And then you would essentially, and they'd help you do this, give that property to your donor-advised fund or whatever portion you want before it's sold. At the sale, the portion given to your donor-advised fund at closing would just immediately flow into the donor-advised fund. You completely miss the capital gains, and then it immediately becomes a charitable deduction up to the limit. So that's going to be the best way to go about that, and it's a fabulous strategy. And that DAF, if you will, that's what they call it for short, becomes your engine for giving, and then you'd begin granting it out to your church or any other 501c3 that you'd like. But give me your thoughts on all that, Rick.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was looking for. But, I love America, but I love not having to pay all the taxes that I pay for some of the ridiculous things we fund
Sure.
with those taxes. So consequently, I know that the money is going to be more well spent on the other end of this rather than in taxes, and it will help people and places. So, that's outstanding. That's exactly what I was trying to come up with as a strategy. So I would open the fund first, and then at the sale, I could populate the fund with money that I think I would need.
That's exactly right. Stay on the line. I'll give you the finer points on that. This is Faith and Finance. We'll be right back. Grateful you've tuned in to Faith and Finance Live. I'm Rob West, your host. This is where we recognize that God owns it all. You're a steward or a manager of God's resources, and money is a tool to accomplish God's purposes. Hey, we're away from the studio today, so don't call in, but we lined up some great questions in advance that I know you will enjoy. In fact, let's go ahead and take one of those right now. Let's go to Chicago. Donna, how can I help you?
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. So we have a situation from my husband's first marriage. He has a son, and he has a small family, and he has a hard time keeping a job. And he tries, but they let him go for whatever reason. So then she works, and they're behind on their bills. So, and not often, but occasionally he'll call up and he'll ask for money. And my husband, he helps them out. But then we know that they are partying. They're not believers. We know that they probably buy some pot, cigarettes, which is very expensive. And we just know that if they were to cut these items from their list, they could probably have a lot more comfortable way of living. So he has a tendency sometimes to manipulate my husband. He'll call him and tell him that they're going to lose their home, which they might, and then say that the kids are going to be, the kids are going to be living on the street, and so my husband gets torn and doesn't know what to do. So I've wanted to call for some time now because we just really need some biblical guidance. He won't take advice, and then he gets mad and he won't talk to my husband. So we just need some wise counsel because we want to help them, but we also know that they're spending their money unwisely. And so we don't want to enable that. So hopefully you can say a prayer and just give us some sound advice,
Well, I'd be delighted to. And I know this one is challenging because we love our kids. We certainly don't want to see them suffer. And we want to be a blessing to them. And especially if you have the ability to do that, you have the means to provide, it's hard to resist. And yet, and I think you know this, I'm kind of hearing it a bit in your voice, but I'll just affirm and perhaps verbalize what I think you're already thinking. And that is, you can do far more harm by continuing to provide resources which increases dependency and supports unwise lifestyle choices. So you're basically, by continuing to provide your hard-earned money to this adult child, you are encouraging bad financial habits. And from a spiritual perspective, you're throwing money at a struggling child, which is shielding your adult son from hardship, which may absolutely be the way that the Lord is going to get his attention. And so, I think you just need to be really careful and thoughtful about this. And I think there are other ways to help. I think, you and your husband need to be on the same page. You need to sit down before you go to the adult son and have the conversation and make sure you all are aligned and really make it a matter of prayer. But, if you do go and offer some assistance, it needs to be tied to you really helping to support and reinforce wise decision-making. So, it could be something like, if you pay toward debt, we'll, match it. Things like that are reinforcing the right behaviors. It could be, you're willing to help with a certain outcome, especially if there's grandkids involved, but it's going to be directly to, you're going to pay the bill directly, not just giving the cash, because that may be used for, in fact, you have good, reason to believe it's being used for things that would not be in alignment with biblical values. And so you make that, check directly out to that particular entity, or, helping with that bill. All of that could be predicated on this son, walking with a certified Christian financial counselor. Maybe there needs to be a third party here. You all don't need to be the accountability here, but, perhaps your willingness to help in the future could be tied to, them providing, walking along with somebody that they're accountable to. And that person, if your son will give you permission, being willing to check in with you along the way and say, hey, here's how it's going. Now, at the end of the day, could this go sideways and it provide a wedge in the relationship? Yes. Could it mean that, he stops talking to your husband for a period of time? Absolutely. And that's hard. But I think the last thing we would want to do is continue to provide help that is not going to allow the Lord to get his attention to the extent he wants to do that. And this is the way to do it. It's not going to reinforce any kind of wise financial decision-making and stewardship in the future, because there's no reason to make any kind of change. We're shielding him from, the consequences of mismanagement and unwise decision-making. And the longer you do that, the longer it's going to take for him to learn from this, surrender his life to Jesus, which is far more important than anything, put him as the king and the Lord of his life and his money, and then begin to heed wise counsel from God's word about how to manage what's left. Does that make sense, though?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. That's hard. This is not easy. And I think, what it means is we make this a matter of prayer. I think you need to clarify your financial expectations. I think, you may decide to exercise tough love here, and that's probably just given the history of this and how long it's going on and what you're experiencing. I think perhaps the next season is about saying, listen, we love you. We just can't continue to support the decisions you're making. And so we need to stop for this time. And that may have relational consequences, but I think you can rest in the fact that, our main objective is that he'd surrender his life to the Lord, and then the financial decision-making based on God's word would follow. Donna, thanks for your call today. We'll be praying for you. Let us know how it turns out. Let's head over to Tennessee and talk to Carla. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for being on the air today. I can only reach this channel down here at my camper. on the radio, and so I'm very thankful. So on my way here, I stopped to pay cash. It was something, and I gave them a $20 bill. They couldn't give me change. They said, we don't do cash, but we can take your money. We'll just have to keep all the extra, And so they forced me to use, plastic. And my next question is, so I've gotten a conversation this morning with somebody about Bitcoin, wanting to invest in Bitcoin, and so just this whole crypto money, Bitcoin exchange. As Christians, where do we stand? What's our best position on this and dealing with it?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and with regard to crypto, Bitcoin is clearly the one that has emerged. It's the oldest. It's the most recognizable in the crypto space. It has gone mainstream. A lot of people looked at it like digital gold as a store of value to protect purchasing power. We did see a divergence between Bitcoin and gold more recently, so it's not acted in the same way as we would have expected if we look at it through a digital gold lens. But I think the reality is that it's here to stay. The idea that the blockchain technology is something that is going to be with us, and there's wide application for it. I don't think it's something we should be, concerned about. Ultimately, as we look at what Bitcoin is, it's a decentralized way out of government control to have something that checks most of the boxes of functional money. And in direct contrast to inflationary monetary policies, which we're seeing around the world today, it was designed to be sound money. I would be careful, though, on investments because it's very speculative. Let's talk about that a bit more off the air. We'll be right back.
This is Faith and Finance Live with Rob West. Hey, if you hear a phone number mentioned today, please ignore that number and don't call us, because today's broadcast was previously recorded. But we think the upcoming information will help you and make you a wise steward of what God's given you. So please, stay tuned.
So what is crypto and blockchain? This was a question Carla asked in the prior segment. Blockchain at the end of the day is a record of transactions that are updated and maintained by, and this is key, a decentralized network of computers. So the big idea is that instead of a centralized ledger like your bank maintains, blockchain allows a decentralized network of computers to record and maintain a record of transactions. Well, why is that important? Well, because we're seeing a breakdown of trust in centralized institutions, and that distrust has led in part to the rise of crypto. Most crypto projects take something we're already familiar with, currency, saving, lending, and so forth, that normally require us to interact with big institutions and redesign that function using computer code in a way that enables groups to accomplish it in a trustless, decentralized way. And so as we look at Bitcoin, obviously Bitcoin has come along and is really the largest of the players in this space. It entered in the story in 2008. It was an anonymous white paper that outlined this new digital currency called Bitcoin, and it was a peer-to-peer currency outside of government control. Amazingly, the whole white paper was only 9 pages long. Anyone can download it and read it. But it's captured the imagination of millions of people. And one of the key ideas to understand is that unlike government currencies, which are constantly being devaluated by printing more, there's a fixed cap of 21 million Bitcoins that can ever be produced, which is what gives it some of the same or sound money appeals that have long attracted people to gold. Now, in terms of who should consider having it in their portfolio and who should probably stay away, I would say it comes down, and it always does, to risk tolerance and position sizing. Gold, that is a good lens as a starting point. So if someone found gold appealing for all the reasons I just mentioned, then it might make sense to consider diversifying a small portion of that gold allocation, which remember is no more than 5 to 10%, a portion of that to Bitcoin, but keep the sizing small because it's just so volatile. And again, although it was moving more closely to the movement of gold, we've seen quite a bit of a divergence there, and the price swings are just part of the deal. So I would say bottom line is nobody needs to have Bitcoin in their portfolio. Some people may want it if they can handle the risk and they want to diversify, but I would keep that in a very small percentage of the portfolio and consider it highly speculative and volatile, and just understand what you're getting into. I hope that helps, though. It's a great question that comes up a lot. All right, let's head back to the phones. To North Carolina, Virginia, how can I help?
Hey, I've been seeing a lot of talk on social media about if you have something like a 403B or whatever, you're going to lose a lot of money, and if we don't, I guess, convert it to a Roth. And I wanted to know how can you not pay all this taxes on this money?
Yeah.
And is that a good idea, or can I just leave it where it's at, or should I just start doing a little bit at a time?
Yeah, it's a good question. This is the right time to think about it. Timing is everything when it comes to Roth conversions. Basically, what this is you move money from a traditional IRA, 401k, 403b to Roth. You pay the taxes now, and when you do that, then from that point forward, once you pay the tax, it grows tax-free for the rest of your life. So when does that make sense? Well, it makes sense, first of all, when you're in a lower tax bracket now. So working part-time often means reduced income. If for some reason you expected higher taxes later, then this is a window to consider that. Now, why would you have higher taxes? Because the most likely scenario is that in the future, you're going to go from part-time income to no income, and maybe you're living off of your retirement savings and Social Security. So you may actually even be in a lower bracket in the future, unless, and this is an unknown, tax rates go up, which is very likely. We're probably at the low end of what we'll see in the rest of our lifetimes. And so that could be a reason why you would go ahead and start converting some now. And you may want to start doing it before required minimum distributions, which are going to kick in for you at 73, and that could push you into a higher bracket later. So the idea is we kind of fill up those lower tax brackets with smaller conversions to Roth now, leading up to age 73, especially if you were to stop working between now and then and your taxable income drops. And then you could start converting some of it to Roth, and then that portion would no longer have any taxes associated with the gains, but you would also not have any required minimums in the future, which could be helpful as well. I think another key idea is, do you have the cash to pay the taxes? Could you pay the taxes that you would generate through the conversion from outside the IRA, not the account itself? If you do have the ability to do that, that could be another reason to consider it. And then lastly, your Roth withdrawals don't increase your taxable income, which could help with Medicare premiums down the road. It also would allow your heirs to inherit the money and not have to pay tax on it at their tax rates. So those are the reasons people consider this, Virginia. I think the key is it really comes down to, is this a window for you, perhaps after you stop working, before required minimum age, when you're in the lower bracket, where you could fill up these lower brackets with smaller conversions, and do you have the money outside of the account to pay the taxes? I think those are the key considerations. I hope that helps, though, give you at least a few more things to think about. Thanks for your call today. Let's head to Mississippi. Faye, how can I help you?
Yes. My sister and I inherited our parents' house when they passed, and she didn't want it, so I bought her half out. So now I'm getting ready to sell the house. So how would the inheritance work? Would I have to pay taxes on all of the house, or my half of the house, or I'm just wondering how that worked.
Yeah. So you have it on the market now, is that right?
It's about to be on the market. I haven't put it there yet. I was just trying to figure all this out.
Yeah, good. So the big advantage here is what's called a step up in basis. So when you inherited the home, the value was reset to the market value of the property as of the date of death for whoever owned it when you inherited it. So if the home was worth $500,000 when it was inherited, that becomes the new cost basis, not what your parents paid for it originally. When you bought your sister's half, that portion is based on what you paid your sister for it. So now you have kind of two pieces to this pie. You've got the half that you inherited, which the cost basis for that half is the market value of that half as of the date of death. And then you've got the half that you bought from your sister, and the purchase price for that half is your cost basis. So what gets taxed when you sell? Well, you're only taxed on the gain after the inheritance for one half and the purchase for the other half. So if the inherited value was $500,000, you bought your sister's half for $250,000, then you sell it for $550,000. $50,000 is taxable. So ultimately, there's going to be a capital gains tax, and if you held it for more than a year, it'll be a long-term capital gain, and it'll be the selling price minus the cost basis, which again, for half of it is the date of death, for the other half is based on your purchase price. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, it does. So when you just told the gentleman earlier about putting some of the money, like when he was going to sell his land, and putting some of the money into the fund, could that work in my situation as well?
It absolutely could. Now, did you move into this property, or has this just been a property you've held
No, sir,
onto?
It's been a rental. I've been saving it.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you going to have a gain on this sale on either portion?
Yes, sir, I will.
Okay, yeah, got it. So whichever portion has more gain, where your cost basis is lower, meaning it's appreciated more, whether it's the inheritance portion or the rental portion, by giving the property or some percentage of it to your donor advised fund prior to the sale, you would not pay any capital gains on that portion, and at sale, it would automatically cause that percentage to flow into your donor advised fund, and then you could start giving it away, and you would save taxes and get a bigger deduction because you'd get the deduction on the full amount that went into the fund.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So where I would head is the National Christian Foundation, ncfgiving.com. And I'd be happy to help you make a connection with somebody there. They're the oldest and biggest in this space, founded by Ron Blue and Larry Burkett, and they would never get in the way of you giving this money to a Christian ministry, which another donor-advised fund sponsor could say, well, that particular ministry is not on our list. We won't allow you to give there. And NCF solely exists to help God's people give their money away to advance the kingdom, and so they'll always be supportive of that. So I think they're the best place for you to go. My team can get your information, and I'd be happy to make a handoff to somebody at the National Christian Foundation who can walk you through this, Faye, okay?
Yes, sir, please, and thank you.
All right, hang on the line. Well, folks, it's been a joy to be along with you today. Thanks for inviting us into your story. What a joy it is to encourage you with God's word as you seek to be that wise and faithful steward. Our goal, that you'd see God as your ultimate treasure. Let me say thanks to my team today. I couldn't do it without them. Tahira, Amy, Omar, Taylor, and Rihanna. Faith and Finance Live is a partnership between Moody Radio and Faith Fi. Have a wonderful day, and come back and join us next time for another edition of Faith and Finance Live.